It's good to be back with my friend Mike Foster. This is episode 2 of As Normal as Weird Can Be.
Can we call this a series now that we have 2 episodes?
I think we're like an episode away from syndication, honestly.
Wow, that'd be great.
Yeah, who knows? This might be on Nick at Night pretty soon. Last time we were together, we talked about, obviously, the global meltdown that we're in and how we adjust ourselves dealing with how we just cope, how we adjust to this new reality, how we grieve. And today I want to talk about marriage, and I want to talk about where we are as couples right now nationally. And we were talking about this in China. There is, obviously a couple months ahead of us, there is a huge uptick in divorce, and that's already starting to happen here.
Absolutely. I mean, the pressure that couples are under with all these new things is showing some fractures and weaknesses in the marriage itself. And so I just think, like, obviously these conversations that we're having at this table, let's just get really practical, helpful. Let's put it out there and see what we can do.
Yeah. In Southern California, which is where we are right now, we have 2 seasons. One is, I would say we have 3. We have daylight savings, whatever that non-daylight savings time is called. And then there's wildfire season.
Oh, yeah.
And in wildfire season, everybody lives on edge. They know the reality, especially in this area.
Santa Ana winds.
Oh,
my goodness. Yeah.
September, October, it's real. Physically, we are aware of how to respond when the house can burn down. What do we do to protect and prepare? Right now, essentially what we're going through is a spiritual, emotional, mental equivalent to wildfire season. What happens in the physical sense is happening in marriage. How do we adjust in our relationships with our spouse? Because right now you have couples who were a year away from retirement who are now realizing all those plans are gone. And how do we relate to each other knowing that was a finish line and something we're excited about? You have couples who are working from home and homeschooling. You have couples who are already on the verge of massive, there was already a divorce in the conversation. Now this is just added. And so how would you help couples right now who are in crisis and are trying to pull back, not live in the sort of cycle of dysfunction?
Yeah, one of the things I've been doing a lot of counseling with couples, and this issue is like so real, so hot right now, because I think so many couples are like, I don't think we're gonna make it. I am so frustrated. I'm so angry. And even in healthy marriages, I know, like this week, my wife and I got into this big old argument about home mortgages, right? Would we ever fight about home mortgages and banks? No, we would never do that. But here we are in this really unique season of our lives, our marriage, and we're just trying to figure it out. And so that frustration, coupled with grief that we talked about last episode, the stuff of not feeling safe just within our own lives and the loss of choice and control. And I also believe, like, I don't think God designed us to be smothering each other. I really don't think that's ever the intention, where we are just on top of each other. We're the only option for relationship, for adult relationship. And for a lot of us, I think, we are spending way more time with this person that we're living with. And we're discovering things about them that we don't like. They're also discovering things about us that they don't like. And so it's bringing a lot of conflict. And so I think one of the things that I'm coaching couples with right now is, like, as best as you can, have positive intent towards this person that you're living with and you're interacting with. And positive intent basically give that person the benefit of the doubt. don't see your spouse as somebody who wants to argue with you about home mortgages and wants to, push your buttons right now. Look at that person as like, okay, they're as scared as I am. They're as frustrated as I am about the situation. And the problem with close connection is that, we're easy targets for each other. My wife is a perfect target for all my frustration and all my anger. Now,
only target.
The only target, right? Because I'm not going to necessarily yell at my kids. I'm trying not to. Yeah. And like, here's another adult, and I'm just going to vomit or spew and so I was, in general, a good question to ask in terms of relationships about really anything that we're being triggered by is, what's the thing behind the thing? Because that is the thing. Mm-hmm. And so maybe in your interactions with your spouse and talking with your wife or your husband, is go, I wonder what the thing behind the thing is right now. Mm-hmm. Because my guess is it has nothing to do with you as a spouse or what you said. It's triggering, it's pulling up all that anxiousness and fear and all those emotions that we're just trying to look for a place to put it.
Yeah.
And you get to be that person for me.
Roseanne and I, everything you're saying has happened in my house in the last couple of weeks.
It's probably happened in everybody's house. Yeah, we've all got a story, right?
And Ro and we had these conversations a lot over the last, 10 years of marriage, but it's really surfaced more and more in these last couple of weeks. But just this reminder, when I talk to couples who are on the verge of divorce or dating couples who are on the verge of breakup, a lot of times we're pointing at the other person saying, I don't like this about you. Yeah. But this, a marriage is a mirror where you're constantly looking at yourself. And a lot of times when we're saying, I don't like this about you, really we're noticing things we don't like about us. Yes. So I'll give you an example. A couple of days ago, Thursday, I think it was Thursday night, Ro, very long day with the kids. I'd had a very long day. And we were in this conversation / argument at night, Thursday night, and she was sad. And I was trying to keep this level of, it's like Reverend Gaston, you know what I mean, from Beauty and the Beast, like everything's fine.
You don't like her sadness.
I didn't like her sadness. Yeah. And I actually verbatim said, I can't handle sadness right now.
Interesting, yeah.
And really what was happening, I was coming here on Friday to film the Easter message. And the sadness meant, in my mind, I can't get the energy up to do sermon preaching.
Yes.
And so the bottom line, it wasn't
the thing
her.
Behind the thing right there.
It was the thing behind the thing. It wasn't her. Mm-hmm. I was looking in the mirror and seeing my own inability to handle my sadness over the current reality and not wanting to name it. Because if I name it, I'm actually having to deal with my sadness and my anger and my frustration. And
so good.
This morning I had a friend who said this in a phone call. He said, right now, he said, and this language is so helpful, the timbers are dry. And so we're ripe for a wildfire in our marriage and in our house. And
I love that whole idea of, and the more aware we can be about our projection of like, hey, maybe this isn't about you, it's about me. I sometimes describe it as, I just get to be the projector screen for my wife's movie.
Yeah, so good.
And so she's writing a story, telling herself a story, thinking about all these things that I'm not aware of. That's all kind of internal dialogue or internal emotions that so she has this movie, and this movie is being projected out of her, and I just get to be the screen. Yeah. I'm receiving it. And this is to me higher level relationship stuff, when we have to actually say, okay, I'm just the screen. I don't have to take this personally. Yeah. I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to go on the attack. Yeah. And just, again, thinking about what is the thing behind the thing right now?
Yeah.
And how can we as a couple and with somebody that I care about, how do I enter into that conversation versus being kind of worked up or arguing about home mortgages or sadness or like let's go there, or Easter messages or whatever. It's like, let's talk about the deeper issues. And what's beautiful about that is that that's where we can actually heal together.
Yeah.
And we can comfort each other and we can reassure each other in those conversations versus the conflict or the arguments that a lot of us are dealing with.
Do you have any helpful rules? Because this is where Ro and I, the day ends, we've gotten through one foot in front of the other, homeschool, working from home.
Yeah.
But at night, when we sit down to talk, the only thing, it's hard because you can't talk about the trip you were going to take. You can't even make any plans.
Yeah.
But what is right in front of you is the pandemic, the crisis. Do you have any rules for how much couples should be talking about this and how much we should be placing some of this on the shelf so we can actually relate in normal human ways and not just through the lens and filter of crisis?
Yeah. There's kind of 3 questions that I encourage couples to use on a weekly basis, kind of like a weekly check-in, just to see how everybody's doing. I think every night, every kind of day presents its different dynamics and different conversations. And I think it's absolutely appropriate for couples to still dream and to still look out and think about the vacation they'll eventually go on. Or, my wife and I, we're still thinking about positive things. I think that's actually an important part of hope. And we talked a little bit about that last time. But there's 3 questions that I'd say if you're kind of struggling, like how do we engage around relationship or marriage? How do we have some helpful conversation? I'd say, number 1, I'd ask the question, what are we doing right now?
That's good.
Talk about that. Like what's working well in the midst of crisis, in the midst of not great circumstances of having to shelter in place and what have you. I think the second question, what isn't working very well? Let's put on the table, and hopefully a non kind of amped up emotional argument. Everybody's hot under the collar. Like let's just engage. Like have a productive conversation around what isn't working right now. And I always say one thing. We don't have to talk about 5 things. What's one thing that's not working well right now? Yeah. And then first question, what is working well? What isn't working well? And then I think that third question that I encourage couples to ask themselves and talk about is what is one thing that we could do this week to strengthen our relationship? What activity? What is it like? Go for a walk? Should we have a date? Kind of a shelter and home kind of date.
Yeah.
What is one thing that we could do that would help us feel more connected and closer together?
Yeah. How would you, dates are, you go somewhere, you have a waiter, whatever. How do you have it, just at a practical level, especially with kids at home or any stage of life, how do you date at home? Are you hearing any stories of?
Oh my gosh. I think the lack of relational connection between a couple, focusing on the kids, focusing on all the other stuff, money issues. Money is such a driver. Any money stress within a relationship is going to heighten everything in terms of conversations and people's emotions. So we just have to again, what is the thing behind the thing? Possibly are stressing about finance. I know that was our conversation with the mortgage. Yeah. We weren't fighting about mortgage, and I wasn't even attacking. I had no intention to argue with my wife, but it was this pressure that I was feeling about money and trying to get our mortgage delayed and just some of those things that all of us are trying to figure out. And so relationally connecting and making that a priority, even just 30 minutes, 45 minutes a week, where it's adult time, where it's positive conversations, it's vulnerable conversations, it's a real opportunity to catch up. My wife and I started coffees on Saturday morning. It's not ideal, especially the weather around here has been cruddy.
Yeah.
not ideal.
The
weirdest weather. So we're sitting out on our patio, get out of the house, away from our daughter, away from technology, and we just drink coffee and we have a conversation in our sweatpants and nothing fancy, but we've made that a priority, and we've set Saturday morning as our time to do this. Yeah. So just as you would have a date night, or maybe Friday night you go out, or Wednesday night, or whatever the thing is for you, you have to establish a rhythm for for intentional connection. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen because there's 1,000 other things happening in your week right now that are going to prevent that from actually occurring.
Yeah.
So getting strategic about that. It doesn't have to be fancy. Honestly, it can't be fancy.
Yeah.
Another thing that I haven't done this yet, but a friend of mine, Judd, threw it out. He said, "Hey, let's do a double date." I'm like, what are you talking about, a double date? He said, "Well, we'll get on Zoom, and you guys will have dinner, at your house, and we'll have dinner at our house. It'll be kind of a double date, no kids, just adults."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good, clever idea. So again, creativity, lowering those standards, but making sure that you have a touch point, and maybe even using those 3 questions as the framework for healthy conversations.
I thought about forcing our kids to be a waiter, like waiters.
Give them little tuxedos.
Yeah, like I'm scared of what they want for a tip.
Yeah.
And they're 8, 6, and 3, so I don't know how helpful they would be. But I think you can get creative, is the point. We have this candle that sits in our dining room, and we never light it. It's in there, but it's got there's probably a more technical name for it. It has like 4 things you can light. But we bring it in, and we turn off the lights, and there's an Italian place that's doing takeout, and we pick that
There
up,
you go,
split a pasta, and that's been, in the same way pre-pandemic, you should have some kind of rhythm in place. Mm-hmm. In the pandemic, there needs to be a rhythm in place for connection, conversation. I love that question. What can we do to strengthen our? What's the one thing? And that's the one thing.
I think too, the other thing I would say for couples who maybe are struggling right now and like, I don't want to connect right now. I need my space.
Yeah.
That's appropriate too. And I think you have to have both, and you have to have time together, but you also need your time. Because if you're not getting your time, it's going to be difficult to do our time together. And so, and not to be, I always tell couples too, like conflict is the cost of caring. I'm not going to have conflict with people that I don't actually care about, or I don't care about their opinion, or I don't love. It's just, conflict is the cost of connection.
Oh, that's good.
So we don't have to like judge our marriage or judge our relationship too harshly just because we are having conflict. That's actually a pretty normal thing. The thing that we want to have is make sure that after the conflict and maybe the discharging of all those really big emotions and things that were said, that we can come back and repair and heal. And that conflict's very normal. It is part of intimate relationships. It's part of marriage. Like having no conflict means that you probably have checked out and that you don't care.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it's happening right now, that's actually a good sign in some weird way.
Oh, that's so good. Well, because to a certain degree, we're all in internal conflict, but we're also in conflict with roommates, anybody we're living with, but especially in marriage right now, financial, kids, it's all, and if you're fighting, if you're struggling, that's like you're alive and you're in the game. Yeah. And that's a good sign.
Yeah. And don't label or judge or make any big decisions about what your relationship means in this season, because there are mitigating factors, there are dynamics at play right now, and say this is not your normal. This is not the time to make some big theory on life about who your spouse is and what they mean to you. It's like, it's going to be difficult, and that's why we're doing these roundtables, because this is going to be hard.
Yeah.
So do things, small things, get some good, healthy perspective that will help alleviate some of the tension that all of us are feeling right now.
One of the things that I think all of us are dealing with is just more stress in marriage and life. And some of this is just pandemic or not, but how should we interact, help, have the conversation when our partner is stressed? How do we create framework for those conversations where I know right now I'm really passionate about wanting to be understood because everything's changed, but I know I also need to be just as passionate about listening and hearing, because for Rosanna, everything has changed, probably more so, to be honest. Yeah. So how do we how do we have those kinds of ears right now?
Well, in that, what an incredibly loving thing that we can do is to see our spouse through the lens of someone who's hurting and stressed and overwhelmed. And three things that I'd say, like if you see that in your spouse or in any relationship, I think the first response is to have empathy, to connect into their feelings, to see their frustration, to see their worry, to see their disappointment. Like, it's not what anybody signed up for. And so that empathy response would be the first action if you see your spouse in stress. The second thing, and this is kind of a really easy thing, but incredibly important, touch. Touching your spouse. You know, my wife and I wrote this little book, and we talk about the 3:30 challenge, where hugging for three times a day for 30 seconds. And that's because touch, we believe the power of touch, not only, I think God designed us this way, like our bodies, when we are touched, we are comforted.
And right now, your spouse is the only person you can actually have less than 6 feet, that your kids and your spouse. That's so powerful.
Yeah, but
we're all lacking that.
Absolutely, like so much scarcity in touch right now.
Yeah.
So, we are not being touched. And so if you see stress in your spouse and you really actually want to love them well, empathize and then touch them, hug them, hold their hand. Just put your arm on their shoulder. Like, it doesn't have to be like sexual touch. It could just be touch, loving touch. And then the third thing is just reassurance. Reassuring your stressed spouse that we will get through this, that we're in this together. Help orient our thinking towards hope in the future, even when it feels a little bleak right now.
Yeah, that's good. Mike, thank you. This is incredibly helpful, and I can't wait to come back to the table and discuss more.
We'll keep talking.
Thank you.